So I wanted to talk just a little bit about something I hope to do with the medium of YouTube in the near future. I'm trying to figure out how best to convey the freedom language that I've been using in freedom coaching for the past several years. I had an opportunity to have a conversation with a young man and his mother, a friend of mine, about that language. And honestly, it was one of the most exciting and thrilling conversations of my life because they were receptive, they were excited, they enjoyed and got what I was trying to say. They gave me the time I needed to say it, which is something we have a habit of not doing in the world today. We are trying to be so fast. We had spread out. I spread out like 7 feet of freezer wrap on my big dining table, and we sat down and didn't get up for 5 hours. We talked and talked and talked through and about this freedom language that I've developed or has been given to me, perhaps by the Holy Spirit. That has become so much a part of every conversation that I have and every understanding that I have about the problems that people are having or the problems that the world is having. The fact that it is a simple, elegant way to try to give people a handle on their hard, deep emotions or on difficult things that are going on in the world. It makes it, I think, elegant. A simplicity that goes beyond simplistic to, there's a simplicity that goes beyond complexity. There's a simplicity that renders what Christopher Alexander called pattern languages. And I believe that in this symbolic, visual, verbal language, I have something that is transformative for the people who hear it. As I use it in freedom coaching, it's easily absorbed. People easily receive it and apply it to the situations that they're facing. They learn in it a language sometimes that they can share with spouses or with children that help those relationships be more full of real content about what's the dynamics of relationship and the needs of people emotionally or socially. It helps people move toward freedom, because it started as just a simple visual description of what freedom looks like. So my intention is to try to spread this symbolic language out there so that other people can be talking to me in that language. And when they do, it's very exciting because you all bring new insights to me. I believe that in our midst, in between us, Christ is made manifest. And one of the things that has happened with this freedom language is that it has happened. It's been like a poem, something happening in the midst of his people, in the conversations like this one I had the other day that was so satisfying, so thrilling. I saw a young man feel that he had a new handle on what's going on in the world, what's going on in himself, the complexity of his feelings and his masculinity and his desire for marriage and his hopes and dreams for education. All the things that are about us come into play in a way that it's hard to explain unless you've experienced it. So one of the reasons why I wanted to try learning how to do YouTube videos is that I think it's such an experiential thing to speak in this language, to learn this language, and it needs the visual support of all the little drawings I do. I wrote my first book about it called You Free when a friend who I had been working with for years in what we now call this freedom coaching called me as she had moved and said, "Where's that book?" And I said, "What book?" And she said, "That book with the language that you were always writing, the symbols that you were always writing on backs of napkins and scraps of paper as we talked. I've got a file of those scraps, but I want to talk to someone else in that language, and I want to move through it more systematically, so I need your help." And I thought I'd get the book, but there isn't one. And at that very moment, I was praying for Mary's guidance that she would help me know what to write next. And I believe that God operates through his people, through the church, to guide us to become who we are, to do what he has called us to do. So I just took that as Mary's helpful guidance to call me through the church to go ahead and try to write that language. Over the years, after it first sprang to mind in a conference that I was doing, it grew into several different kinds of symbologies. And the fascinating thing about writing that first book is that it showed me the way to the next two. I realized that in You Free, I was speaking about a three-dimensional human being, and that some people don't perceive themselves even so fully as to realize what I mean by that, a three-dimensionality of the human person. So I, at the point where I finished that first one and had begun in conversations to need more symbols, to talk about more things, I had begun to use what I call that continuum arrow to allude to the fact that if we do not have well-woven contexts for being, if the context of self is disintegrated, then we may face problems with becoming a fully realized, fully free, three-dimensional human being. So one book led to another. The second book was Full Spectrum Freedom. And then at the point where I had finished that, and there's a long story behind that I'll try to tell later, but at the point where I had done that, I realized there are people out there in our world who don't even have the self-awareness, the self-consciousness. I call them dots. They are kind of one-dimensional human beings who have not been realized in the person of maybe a mother. They've not been seen. They've not developed in this dimensionality of human being, and they don't even perceive that their contexts are of their making, that they can respond to their own being by considering the context of being. And so I had to consider what happens to that person. They are still fully real, they're still fully dimensional, but they need a context in such an enormous way. And on the one hand, they are so small that it seems impossible to bring light into that smallness, that darkness. But on the other hand, they are so human and so real and are so unique and unrepeatable and have human dignity that I know there would be an answer for someone. And of course, the answer is to be a context. For someone who is that small, what you need to be is the context. What the church is the context of human being. And so that when we become fully realized three-dimensional human beings, we become contexts for other people, and we help them weave the context of their being into fullness, into wholeness. And in so doing, I think we reorganize the world in that little bitty way that Christopher Alexander called a morphogenetic sequence. It's small enough patterns, small enough weaving, small enough healing that it enters the world without too much resistance. It enters the life of that person without too much resistance. So I'm just kind of winging it here because the next thing that I want to do is this bringing to life of what I call FoAm, the freedom language, and explaining why I call it that, telling more of the story behind how it developed, and showing you through the little diagrams that I am such a lame artist, anybody can copy and draw for themselves, and showing you how you can get a handle on all the confusion and craziness of the world and begin to see yourself as a structure that God is forming for life, for the life of Christ within, for the realization of yourself, for the restructuring of the world, literally, and how words help you do that. So this is just my opening gambit, and I'll try to do more lessons in freedom as we move forward. And again, these are my these are my first YouTubes. They are the practice YouTubes for what I hope will be maybe a more professional, better executed teaching in the future. But honestly, if it doesn't get more technically better than this and you still get the message, that's okay with me. I don't need bells and whistles. I just would love to be able to transmit, to communicate through this medium, a language that I believe God has given me for your great good and certainly for mine. And I've seen it operate for great good in the lives of other people. So if this is a space where I can share my freedom language, then I really look forward to doing it. And I hope you'll enjoy it and let me know how it hits you. When you need more lessons, tell me. And when there's things that confuse you, let me know, because that's what my job would be, to explain it better, to make it simpler, to go around again. You just can't imagine how many times we've gone around and around and around learning and using and reciprocating in this freedom language. And there's a handful of people in the world who speak this language with me, and I think they would agree that they've become more free as a result. So I hope you do too. Here we go.